Welcome to the Wildverse podcast, where we introduce you to the wild world of taxidermy, a place where artists and hunters collide. I'm Heather.
And I'm Ashley.
And for this week's episode, we're just going to cover a bit of the questions that we get asked pretty often as taxidermists.
Yeah, a little bit of taxidermy FAQ, frequently asked questions. And a lot of these questions, like we get as taxidermists, we also get these a lot on social media, just, general taxidermy questions. Some of these questions might be more basic, but if you already know the answer to these questions, maybe the answer will give you ideas on how to answer when people ask you. Because after all, these are frequently asked questions.
Yeah, there's a lot of those questions you get asked that you're not really quite sure how to answer. And sometimes once you hear it come from somebody else, you're like, that's the perfect way to answer that one.
Put that in the bank,
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So, like, for instance, number one is the question, what is taxidermy?
So, literally, taxidermy is the art of preserving an animal's body by mounting or stuffing for the purpose of display or study. That comes right from Wikipedia.
Okay.
The word taxidermy is derived from the Greek words taxi or taxis, which means arrangement, and derma, which means skin. So, taxidermy translates literally to arrangement of skin.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's a good way of piecing it together. I know just that first part, taxi, I have had many people call me as a tax service or a taxi cab company. I guess they see it in the phone book and they're not quite sure what that is.
One of my favorite mix-ups people get is I say, "Oh, I do taxidermy." "Oh, you're a tax attorney?" No.
Yeah, I guess if you say it fast enough, it kind of sounds like that.
Yeah, or like countless people think, "Oh, you do taxes or you work for H&R Block?" Like, no.
Gosh, I wish I knew how to do my taxes.
They're tricky. We don't specialize in that.
No,
But
no.
yeah, so taxidermy, it literally just means arrangement of skin. And like I said, it's the process of mounting or stuffing over like an armature to portray an animal in a lifelike state. So it's an art, it's a science, it's for museums in order to, study these animals. It's kind of cool. Like there is some taxidermy of extinct animals, so we can still kind of have a display of an animal that we can look at and study even after they're gone.
Yeah, that's a really good purpose for taxidermy. And I mean, of course, it's cool getting your mounts done of your trophy that has a great story behind it. But like you said, there's some extinct animals that the only way we can even see what they look like, other than maybe pictures, and some of them I think were before pictures were really a thing. So that's a neat way that taxidermy can kind of show people some science.
Yeah. Oh, side note, real quick, it made me think of it. There's this little penguin that's like native to somewhere in the Arctic, and it's extinct. And or it's not a penguin. It's like I'm gonna fudge the name. Let me look it up real quick.
Okay. You're not talking about a dodo bird?
No, it's like a little penguin looking thing. Oh, it's an auk. Okay, so I just looked it up and it's called an auk or the great auk. It looks like a penguin, but it's not, I think. Or, I could be
Huh.
lying actually. But anyway, it's classified as extinct, but they do have taxidermied specimens of this animal still. So I think that's really cool.
I never heard of that. Now maybe if you guys stay tuned and stay vigilant, that might be a good a trivia question
Oh, yeah, good call. We can have a call
because
back.
I don't think I'm going to remember that.
All right, question number 2. What do you do with the excess skin? This is probably one of the most common questions I get asked on my TikToks when I post about an animal. What do you do with the excess skin?
Yeah, I guess doing shoulder mounts, you get a lot of excess skin, so I can see that being something that they wonder about.
Yes, it's a super common question because I'm showing that I'm cutting off the excess skin in the back of the shoulder mount, like you said. What do we do with it? Well, typically there's not enough material to do anything with necessarily. How would you answer that?
So I know there's a couple different ways. Most of it gets thrown away. I mean, like if it's
Yeah.
deer excess hide, it gets thrown away because, as you know, and as other taxidermists know, it's a wet tan. Wet tans, when they dry, they get pretty hard, like stiff. Like I've made a couple pillows out of like moose hide or like kind of cool hides, and they're nice for like decoration, but they're just so stiff.
Right, I think people have the perception that it's like a nice soft tan, and it's really not. It's like,
Yeah.
it'll dry like cardboard. So unfortunately, there's not a lot that you can do with it. So a lot of it does get thrown away. Some of the bigger pieces I like to save just in case, like you're saying, make something out of them like pillows. But I do have like a whole bag full of excess skins that I just have never done anything with. So, unfortunately, there's not a lot you can do.
No, I know we give a bit to a fly tying guy, just
Oh, there you go.
just random hides, like hides like fur and hair he'd never get to work on, like, kudu and nyala and caribou and things that like he just isn't gonna typically get to tie flies with. So that's a good way if you know anybody who does that, they'll take whatever you got.
Yeah, I'd like to repurpose them however I could, or like give them to somebody like that. But yeah, it's kind of hard to do a lot with them.
Yeah.
But no, that's cool. If I could find a fly fisherman to send these to, I would.
There you go. Yeah, it's a good way to use them. So we covered what happens with the excess skin. A question that I've been asked, and when people ask me what one of the silliest questions is I've been asked is, what happens to the meat when you want to have an animal taxidermied? Which, when you look at it that way and ask it that way, it makes a lot of sense that people bring their animal to be taxidermied, and they wonder like, can I get my meat? Can like is it what's gonna happen to it once it goes into the taxidermist?
Yeah, I think, another misconception that people have, they're like, "Oh, all you used was the skin." They expect, somehow the taxidermist preserves the whole body, meat, organs, and all, which you can do in freeze drying, but freeze drying isn't like technically taxidermy, kind of. I mean, it's taxidermy adjacent, right? And so, yeah, what happens to the meat when you want to have an animal taxidermied? You eat it.
Yeah.
You get to keep it.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Like if people bring in a lot of times with turkeys is the most common one that you get asked, like, hey, can I have my breast meat back? Hey, can I have all of my meat back? You have people bring you bears that are, not skinned out. Of course you can have your meat back. We'll skin it and you can come pick it up and take it. But Ashley, a lot of the deer that you get have a lot of neck roast left. That
Yes.
just gets thrown out. I'm personally not eating anything that people brought me. I'm not saving it.
I've heard some taxidermists, they're like, "Oh, well, there was a lot of meat left on there. I just grilled it up or whatever." And
Yeah,
hey, that's
mm-mm.
fine if you know kind of the customer, if you know how it was treated maybe, but I am in the
True.
camp where no, I'll pass.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, people they do leave a lot of neck meat on deer sometimes, which isn't totally a bad thing, yet sometimes it is a lot and that could have been eaten.
Yeah, but then again, too, a lot of those big old bucks are the ones they leave it on, and I don't think they really want the neck roast from that anyways.
True, true. But yeah, good question. So you keep the meat. Okay, let's move on to question 4. What do you call taxidermied animals? Like, what do you refer to them as?
Well, let's see. I call them mounts. I always say mounts or mounted. It's just what I've been in the habit of. So, I don't know, is there any other thing that you've heard people call taxidermied animals?
Oh, I guess not. I always call them mounts. They're the taxidermy mounts. Mounts. I'm getting my mount back. Got my deer mount on the wall.
Yeah.
They're mounts, and because the process is, you're mounting an animal on a mannequin.
Yes. Yeah, I feel like people in other countries probably call them something different. I'd love to hear what that is, if anybody would comment on this at all and inform us of what it's called in other countries. That would be kind of neat.
But yeah, if you see somebody with a mount on their wall, you can be like, "Oh, cool mount," and they'll be like, "Oh, you know what you're talking about."
Yeah. Yeah. Another thing that a lot of people call a taxidermied animal would be question number 5. Why is taxidermy called stuffed? You'll go get your deer mounted taxidermy to be like, "Oh, I'm going to get my deer stuffed."
And then a lot of people are like, "Oh, look at all those stuffed animals," and they're referring to taxidermy.
That is true. That kind of goes into that question 4 about the taxidermied animals. What do you think of when taxidermy is called stuffed? Like, what do you think? Where do you think that derived from?
Well, I think, and I try to maybe explain to people, like, super old taxidermy was more likely stuffed. Like it was, literally you had like the skin, it was sewed up like a pillow sort of, and you'd literally stuff the animal with cotton or paper and whatever. So like to fill the void of the body, it was literally stuffed, versus the process now we mount the animals, right? So that's kind of what I think of. And unfortunately, like it's like a vintage term, an antique term,
Yeah.
but it's still used so commonly in, our common vernacular or whatever. So Yeah, I personally am like, "Ah, stuffed," don't call it that. I think of, like, a little plushy stuffed animal.
Yeah, I know it doesn't make you think of an art at all. It sounds really crude.
No, or like, for example, on TikTok again, everyone's like not everyone, on TikTok again, people go, "I thought they were stuffed." People
Yeah.
think they're like Build-A-Bear, but they're stuffed.
Man, that'd be great if it worked like that.
I know, you put the animal up to like a stuffing, Build-A-Bear machine, and it just
Yeah.
plumps it back up.
Yeah, perfect anatomy and everything. That would be fantastic.
But it's yeah, kind of an antique term. That's kinda where I think of it as. So, unfortunately, stuffed is where it's commonly used. It's not correct, so I try not to ever use that word when I
Yeah,
talk about taxidermy.
same.
Alright, let's go question number 6. Do you have to go to college to become a taxidermist?
So the answer to that would be no. But if you go back and look at and listen to episode number 2, we really kind of cover everything that has to do with how you become a taxidermist. And you can go to college. There are college courses, but no, you do not have to go to college to become a taxidermist.
Yep, no college degree needed.
Yep, some states don't even require licenses, so you're good to go.
Yeah, and on that note, you don't even have to go to taxidermy school, but I do personally recommend it. Or go back to episode 2, and you'll learn all about like what we think about taxidermy schools and all that as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That kind of leads us into question number 7. Do you need a license to practice taxidermy?
Yes, so that's another callback to episode 2. We kind of cover that. But do you need a license? The answer is maybe, possibly, because about half the states require a taxidermy license in order to be in the business of doing taxidermy. And so we have that listed somewhere, I think, or maybe we can repost it, Heather, like our
Yeah.
list that we found of like all the states that require licenses and stuff. So always check your local regulations because, for example, I'm in Oklahoma. I don't need a taxidermy license. Heather, you're in Pennsylvania.
Yep, you need a license to do it. If you're under a shop, their license, counts, but Pennsylvania does require licensing.
This episode of Wildverse is sponsored by Pro One Performance Chemicals. Pro One specializes in tanning chemicals for the professional taxidermist. They offer a complete line of tanning products to provide you with everything you need to tan your next tide. I really like their Pro Max Tan for my personal tanning projects. They make it so simple, it's easy to follow instructions printed right on the bottle. I actually used Pro One to tan the deer that I won with at Nationals, and I was using this same tan to tan some bobcats last week. It's super versatile. Not only does Pro One have you covered for all your tanning needs, they also sell Pro One Hide Paste, the industry standard in glue. Heather and I both use Pro One Hide Paste on every single mount. We love it. It has a thick consistency that makes it easy to apply to the form, yet it's soft and pliable enough that it can be easily manipulated under the skin after you throw the hide on. If you haven't tried Pro One Hide Paste, I am telling you, you are missing out. And now, as of 2024, you can order Pro One products directly online at pro1performancechemicals.com. That's PRO, the number one, performancechemicals.com. All right. Question 8. Can you make a good living doing taxidermy?
This is a loaded question.
I know. There is no right answer for this question. The answer, I mean, could you? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely can, if you run your shop well and you learn how to kind of budget and you remember you're paying taxes at the end of the year, you can. I remember when I had my own shop, I mean, it was fine. Everything was good. I made enough money to afford my decently nice truck and have a living and go on a couple vacations a year. So, I think it just depends on the shop.
Yeah, I think some taxidermists aren't necessarily the best business people. And so if you have taxidermy business, you have to remember that you're a business person maybe first before you're even a taxidermist. Sometimes, those go like hand in hand. But if you work for somebody, obviously that's different and you probably could make a good living just, depending on what your salary is and stuff. I do taxidermy full time, run my own business, and I live comfortably. So I could be working harder, in fact.
Yeah, it all depends on how you run your shop, how much work you take in, like why it kind of. We'll have an episode on pricing at some point, and kind of talk about all those. But if you have yourself priced well, you'll be fine.
Yes. Yeah, and so yeah, you totally can make a good living. Not all taxidermy businesses make it, and I think it's because, like I said, maybe you weren't the best business person.
Yes, it's hard, we're artists, and I know I struggled with
Yeah,
that. Like, I ran it pretty good for a while, and it catches up with you, especially when, you get swamped with work, and so many people deal with that. It's a really tough balance.
it is. So yeah, it's difficult, but not impossible.
Yes, exactly. So, question number 9 would be, where do the animals come from that we mount?
Well, I get this question a lot too. Where does this animal come from? And the majority of the animals that I work on were hunted animals. Somebody went out and hunted an animal and they want to get part of it. They want to have part of it to display, and the rest of the part they're most likely eating or doing something with the meat in some other fashion, or they're doing it for, wildlife conservation, something like that. So most of the animals that I work on, hunted.
Yeah, I would say that is the majority that taxidermists work on are animals from, like you said, like conservation, hunting. But you do have those that people get roadkills mounted. Science centers and stuff. A lot of times it's usually like birds and such. But those animals ran into windows or got hit by a car. Or they found it dead. There's not a lot of people that want to pay to get something that they just found dead mounted.
Right. Or they, something from like a zoo.
Yes. Yeah.
Animals, a lot of the exotic animals that you see, like, there was a snow leopard at our last Oklahoma show mounted by Jerry Huffaker, and I believe that one came from some kind of zoo. You can't hunt those, they're endangered, they're super endangered. It's not like he went out and hunted it. So
Yeah.
it's definitely from some kind of zoo or wildlife sanctuary, that stuff.
Yeah, that's kind of a good point too to kinda make people realize that it's not every time you see an animal that's mounted, it's not always something somebody shot. It just means that it died.
Yeah. So, unfortunately, animals have to die, and it's a nice way to utilize them or honor them. And
Yeah, yeah, let them do something other than just be worm food.
exactly. Question 10. What's the hardest animal to taxidermy and why?
I guess we'd all have different answers for this.
Yep.
So, I'll go first. I would say the hardest animal. Oh, I don't even know how to answer this. It all depends. So, like, typically, what I'm gonna answer is the hardest animal is a friggin' snowshoe hare. I hate them. I hate them. I hate them. But, if you're a bird guy, you're gonna probably say, like, a woodcock. They're really hard to mount. If I get a really horrible African skin, that's the hardest one to taxidermy. So that's kinda my 2 cents on it. What would you say?
Yeah, I mean, your answers are right along the lines of what I would say as well. I guess what comes to mind is like probably, cats and canines. Those are
Okay,
typically hard to mount
I
because of
got you.
like making them look good.
Yes, yeah.
But
I see. So you're talking about even hardest as in hardest to pull off versus
yeah,
not just hardest to even just put together.
yeah. So, you can answer that both ways too, because, what's the hardest animal to make a look good? Like you said, pull off.
Yeah.
Definitely, cats and stuff. But hardest animal, is due to their, skin's elasticity and
Just being difficult. Yeah.
yeah, that kind of thing. So that's cool that we had two kind of different answers to that question.
Yeah, yeah, I was thinking of just how the skin is and stuff, because snowshoe hares and woodcocks are so delicate. It's like I equate mounting a snowshoe hare to using wet tissue or maybe just tissue paper with wet cotton, like, glued to it.
Oh,
Oh, it's just
yeah.
miserable.
Yeah, I've never mounted, even a rabbit, but I've heard their skin is like paper thin.
Yeah, yeah, they really suck. Then you say about hardest, I think I would agree. I would say not so much just cats as, I feel like bobcats are honestly
Yeah.
harder because of their hair patterns and all those spots, and I also feel like red fox.
Mm.
Red fox are sometimes hard to pull off.
Why would you say red fox as well?
I don't know, there's just something about red fox. I think it's depends on the form that you get. A lot of people shoot a red fox or trap a red, usually not trappers, but people who hunt red fox think it's beautiful. Like they saw this fox running through the field and they saw its white tip on its tail and just think it's gorgeous. and so they wanna get it mounted. But a lot of the times, they're not very nice. They're, like, they're furred not
Mm.
well at all. They just got this big ears, little faces, and if they're not furred nice, they're really hard to not make them look goofy.
Yeah, so I mean that's true for like any, people will shoot a red fox perhaps in like the summertime and then like you're saying they get so beautiful and then when it's mounted up, it's not going to look like those fluffy beautiful mounts that you see that they're all like, in their perfect winter hair coats and
Yeah.
so perhaps that. And then I have another tip or another, tidbit about bobcats. I think they're so difficult to make them look exactly right because people know what cats look like and they're so similar to house cats like in size and everything. So people have, not like a deer, nobody's as up close and personal to a deer as they are to like their little house cat or somebody's house
Yeah,
cat.
that's a good
I think
point.
that might be part of it. I don't know, just a theory, but
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good theory. So, since we answered kinda what's the hardest animal to taxidermy, that leads us into question number 11. What is the easiest animal to taxidermy? I'm interested to hear what your answer is.
So I've thought about this question, and I would probably say the easiest animal to just taxidermy would be a deer.
Okay.
And I say that for a few reasons. Probably the biggest one is that there's so much material out there in order to learn how to taxidermy a deer. If you want to learn how to taxidermy a deer, there's a billion pieces of, learning material, DVDs, look online. There's a million different mannequins that you can order to fit that deer perfectly correct. So many different pieces of information to help you mount it. And then there's even reference pictures. There's like a ton of them out there. So as far as like gathering information and gathering materials and even getting a hold of a deer is pretty easy too. So that's probably why I say that one. But anyway, what do you say?
Well, I had a different answer, and now after hearing you say all those things, I'm like, "Well, I don't even know what the answer would be other than, a deer." So I guess I will put a little twist on it and say for mammal people, a deer would be the easiest. I would say okay, I should say for game head people, deer would be the easiest.
Yes, that's another thing. No feet.
Yes, bird people, I think a pheasant. I think a pheasant, I mean, I'm not a bird person, but from what I hear, pheasants are easy to get. The other animal, if you want to do like waterfowl, ruddy ducks, they say that their skin's like canvas. So they're easy to
Mm.
flesh, easy to mount. Fish people, I would guess probably a bluegill.
I've heard those are kind of hard
Ugh,
actually, but
then
I
I don't.
I don't know personally. I could be totally wrong. So I actually don't know.
I guess I just think all the people that I see compete that are like beginners seem like they ended up like starting with bluegill. But I think a lot of them
Maybe
might
you're
have
right.
been like reproduction bluegill.
That could be true. See, I have very, very limited fish knowledge, so you're
Yeah,
probably
same.
correct.
And then I mean, I guess then the last thing would be like life-size mammal people. Oh, I was gonna say raccoon, but then you gotta deal with their feet.
So maybe like a little raccoon shoulder mount, that might be one of the easiest animals.
Yeah, if you don't gotta do their feet, that would be if you wanna start on fur bearers, that's kinda how I started, was competing, like, with raccoons because I just thought they were easy, so
Yeah, you have that little raccoon head, right?
yeah, yeah, the raccoon that I won national champion with, I sold, so I don't have that anymore, but
Oh, you
they were
don't?
just
Oh,
easy.
yeah. I've heard people say like, "Oh, squirrels are easy to taxidermy, and there's like start with those." And I wouldn't recommend somebody really start with that unless you like the only reason that might be a good place to start is because they're so abundant and they're
Yeah,
easy to
and they're
get.
small, you don't need a lot of
Yeah.
space. I know, but man, I dread squirrels.
No, they're actually kinda tricky, those little tiny hands.
Yeah, yeah. So I would say though, after all I say all of that, if I would decide the easiest animal to taxidermy, if I have like the workload that week and I see this is coming up, I'm like, whew, that's easy. I would say a sheep shoulder mount,
Hmm,
like big sheep.
interesting.
They're just easy. They're fluffy.
Yeah,
They're not like little tiny ears and little tiny ear butts.
don't gotta deal with the preorbital
Yeah,
gland.
yeah, you got, eyes and nose in your lip line, and they're easy. They're real quick to put together. So, yeah, that would be my answers. Has a lot of answers to one question.
Yeah, but yeah, we're thorough. Let's see. Let's move on to question 12. How does the skin not rot?
Well, that shit no, I'm just kidding. I don't know. Let me think on this a second. I was gonna try to have some really, like, simple redneck answer to that. So I would say that the skin doesn't rot because you're tanning it. So some people dry preservative, which I think will be an episode 2 because I'm honestly kinda curious about that. But regardless, you're taking all the fluid and such in the skin and removing it and refilling it with something that doesn't rot.
Right, you're changing the structure of the proteins in that skin.
Yes, that I did give a redneck answer because you just gave a scientific answer. Yeah, you take it out and then you put the other
You
stuff
put it
in.
back in. Oh my gosh. That's you're correct too, though. Oh man, that's funny. But yeah, basically, it's the skin is tanned into hair on leather. Basically, if you see like a leather jacket, it's like
Yeah,
the same thing. Leather shoes, it's similar processes that
yeah.
go into both of those.
All they did was just the process to take the hair off.
So yeah, same deal. It's tanned skin.
Yeah, or like I said, the dry preservative, it's just all the moisture is
Yeah.
taken out. I think I know well, yeah, I know all the moisture is taken out, but then I don't know if it's really I'm not sure. I don't know a lot of about dry preservative, but regardless, if it's
Me
dried
neither.
out, like it's not attractive to bugs and stuff as much. I don't know. There's that.
Yeah, because like even a tan skin can attract
Yeah.
insects, and
Yeah.
so can a dry preserved skin. You hear that a lot sometimes, and so they're not what's it impervious to insects, but the skin won't rot if it was tanned correctly.
Yes, exactly. So I would say let's move on to question number 13. Can you taxidermy a human?
Ah, this I get this question a lot too. Can you taxidermy a human? And I kind of wanted to do like a full episode on this later, but short answer, maybe. What do you think? What would you say?
It is a maybe. I think the average everyday Joe can't taxidermy a human, but some like laboratory or scientific research center can.
We should say it's not legal to taxidermy a person. So just,
Yeah.
this is all in
Yeah.
theory, right?
Yeah, let's not create any any new news lines.
Nobody does this, okay? It's not legal. Don't attempt it. And so, but if it were, you know, legal, let's just say, and is it possible? Like you're saying, could the average person do it? I don't think so.
I think if it was legal, you definitely could do it.
I think so too. I'm in the camp. It's possible. It could be done. It would be really difficult because
Yeah,
there is no, hair
yeah,
to conceal any
and
kind of imperfection,
disgusting.
and also very gross. Yeah, could I do it morally? I don't know.
Like, I mean, at least, like, they don't have a human wouldn't have hair, but at least you have clothes.
True.
There'd
Yeah.
be that. But yeah, so question legally, no. Question if it was legal, probably.
Yeah. So I know that's a weird question, but I get that question so much on my
Yeah.
TikTok. Like I don't know if y'all ever see like you go to TikTok comments and then the top one says like a search bar, human taxidermy at the top. So number 14, question number 14. Can you taxidermy roadkill?
So my question to that is depends on the state that you live in. Some states it's legal, other states you need to buy a permit. Like here in Pennsylvania, I'm not sure what the price is anymore, but it used to be like if you wanted a gray fox or a red fox or coyote or something. Honestly, I'm not sure if coyote because they're open all season, but a fox maybe like 25 bucks or 50 bucks. If you want to get a buck mounted that you hit with your truck, it costs $10 a point.
Oh, that's interesting. I've never heard of that system.
Yep.
Some states you're not even like really supposed to pick up roadkill at all. Like
Oh,
California, I'm from there and there's no potential for getting like a salvage permit. I think they're changing that though. I think in like 2029 they're going to change that ruling.
hmm.
But as of right now, you can't pick up roadkill. Well, there's no force field around them. You can pick them up, but you're you're not legally allowed to.
Yeah, yeah. So, I'm guessing they just have, like, state workers go around and pick them all up?
Probably not.
Oh.
Probably just they go to waste, unfortunately, which
Hmm.
really is, is not cool. So, but yeah, you can, physically taxidermy roadkill. The thing is, you got to make sure it's like not super decayed yet, that it's, still fairly fresh, and
Yeah.
that, because unfortunately, with roadkill, you don't know when it was killed, when it was hit. So, determining if it's possible to taxidermy.
Yeah, and if it's the summertime, you gotta think about how
Mm,
warm that road is. I know a lot of times that's when, like, fox pups or coyote pups or baby bobcats, like, get hit. Well, if you go out in the morning and you're like, "Oh, there's a dead baby fox pup kit," whatever you wanna call it, laying on the road, just because it's all loose and stuff, like, it might be good, but it also might not be because of how hot that road was in the summer.
right. So there's so many variables. So like, I don't really recommend people to pick up roadkill and try to taxidermy it, but I mean, you can if you kind of know what you're doing. I do have a little bit of a quick story about roadkill stuff. When I was driving through Texas one time, I found that mountain lion on the side of the road, and I
Oh.
flipped a U-E to go back to it because I kind of just saw it off on the side of the road. When I got to it, there was snow on the ground, but this animal was still warm. So I called Texas, Fish and Wildlife, whatever, and they had a warden come out, and then they took the mountain lion. I was like, "Really? Can I have this?" And they said
Oh,
no. So I still think
man.
about that. So if you're out there, I'm still salty about that.
I don't blame you. You were like, "Score, like, I could get a mountain lion skin,
Yeah.
to do something with."
Yeah, I called, the warden and was like, "Hey, look at this." And then I told somebody about that. They're like, "Well, you can hunt mountain lions in Texas." So I don't know why they took it.
Yeah, you think they would've just been like, "Yeah, pay us $100 or $200 to get, like, your CITES or something or other."
Oh, and I would have, yeah.
I would've done that. I would've done that
Yeah.
because, I mean, the alternative is paying thousands of dollars for either a
Ugh.
good hide or a hunt, so
Yeah, and it was like a beautiful big cat, and but it was in the panhandle of Texas, and they don't get a lot of cats up there, so I think
Mm.
they were like, "Oh my god, it's kind of a rare thing. We need this."
Dang, I thought Texas was supposed to be land of the free.
I know. Not for mountain lion.
Yeah, roadkill mountain lions.
What's the word I'm looking for? Mountain lion,
I don't know.
getting.
Procurement
Word.
would be the fancy word.
Possession of mountain lions, no.
Yeah. Oh, darn. Question number 15. Can I have my dog or cat taxidermied?
Yeah, you can. Not by me, but you can.
Yeah, so I guess that's not a maybe question. I mean, it is. It's your animal. You're completely allowed to do whatever you want with it, I guess, once it's dead.
I don't think there's any regulations that you can't.
Yeah, I don't not that I know of. I would think if anywhere had it, it'd be a state like California. So,
You
if
would
you haven't
think,
heard of
yeah.
that.
No, I haven't. And so, when people ask, like, can I have my dog or cat taxidermied? Or, yeah, but finding a taxidermist who does that, or at least does it well, that's the hardest part about that process of getting an animal taxidermied like that.
Yeah. Yeah, like, I've taken in a couple house cats, but never thought I would. I just kinda, like it's kind of a fun challenge, but also I kind of feel bad for the people because I don't know where else to send them sometimes for what they want.
Oh, so you have taxidermied
Yeah.
house cats before?
I did 1 house cat, and then I have 2 that I'm, like, working on currently.
Were they similar to bobcats?
Mm, yeah. I mean, other than, like, I made the entire thing, and I'll have to do that
Hmm.
the same, like, for the other 2. They have to be bodies made and cast and sculpted and all that, but, yeah, I mean, the skin was a lot like a bobcat.
Hmm. How interesting. But yeah,
Yeah.
so you can. Would you ever do a dog, Heather? Do you think like
Man, I
a
don't know.
pet dog?
I feel like if I had endless time and resources, I would. I could never do my own dog,
No, no.
but, I mean, I would. I definitely would do mount a dog, but, like, again, you'd have to make everything.
Yeah, that's the thing that I think people maybe don't realize. It's like how much custom work has to go into a dog or cat
Yeah.
mount because they don't necessarily sell mannequin forms to fit a dog or cat. You have to modify everything or make something.
Yep.
It's just trickier. It requires a taxidermist who knows how to do that kind of stuff and is willing to do that kind of stuff. So it's actually, it can be pretty expensive to get that kind of stuff done.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just the money you have into either silicone or bondo and foam and I just all the materials, it ends up being a lot.
Yeah, like if you're carcass casting, if you're wrapping a body, man, there's so much that goes into a custom piece.
Yep, yep, absolutely.
Let's go to question number 16. How soon should I get an animal to a taxidermist?
As soon as possible.
Yep. So, yeah, as soon as you possibly can.
Yes, or you freeze it well, you wrap it, you know, it all depends. I always tell people it depends on your freezer whether or not it's going to get freezer burnt or not because we did at my old shop for a nature center, there was like a little saw wet owl. They're very small, just little tiny owls, and it was in the freezer for like 8 years,
Wow.
and it was fine.
That's a really good piece of advice. Like, it really depends on your freezer. Maybe it
Yeah.
depends on what kind of animal it is. Like, if it's like an owl that has a lot of like, feathers and what do you call it? Like plumage. I don't know. They might
Yeah.
be shielded against freezer burn better. But yeah, if you like, let's say you harvest an animal, you got a deer. How soon should I get this to the taxidermist? As soon as you can. Like, don't wait multiple days. If it's cold out, I even hate saying if it's cold out because then somebody might, say, oh, it's cold out, but I left it in the sun. Don't do
Yeah.
that. So
Yeah.
like, I try not to give any kind of advice like that. Like, just bring it to the taxidermist as soon as possible. Most
Yeah.
taxidermists know that, like, especially during peak of deer season, they're going to be open way later. They can accept a deer, past open hours, that kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah, and then also, on the other hand, when your taxidermist isn't open, what I tell people, and I'm sure every other taxidermist is gonna have their thing that they say as well, but like you said, it should not be in the sun if it's cold out. Sun is bad. Black trash bags are bad
Yep.
because you think how hot it gets underneath the black trash bag. It can be pretty cold out. It could probably be 0 degrees, and that sun hits a black trash bag and it's gonna heat it up.
Yep.
Moisture is bad, so don't sit your buck in a cooler with ice that's melting and then it's laying in water. That's no good.
Oh gosh, yeah, the worst.
Yes, I tell people, I say to be safe, refrigerator temperatures, I say no longer than 3 days. I've had them that it's been a week and they've developed a little bit of a weird smell, and I'm talking about like deer, small mammals, stuff with like really acidic guts in them. That's a bit different.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not gonna last that long. But if you have a whitetail head or a mule deer, whatever type of deer, I say no longer than 3 days refrigerator temps, then you're starting to possibly you might bring it to your taxidermist, and it's not gonna be any good.
Yeah, so that's, like you're saying, don't put it in the black trash bag. I like those cloth like game bags. Those are really
Mm,
nice because they can let air flow through. And they also just don't allow like debris or dirt to get on the animal as well. But obviously, those aren't like waterproof, like you're saying. Don't want
yeah.
to get it wet. Just handling amount. It depends on like what your setup is, and or handling an animal. I mean, depends on what your setup is. And but yeah, the sun is equals bad all the time.
Yes. Yeah.
Moisture is bad. And don't just have an animal drive around in the bed of your truck for a couple days and, go
Yeah.
show all your friends. Like, no, you should go show your taxidermist first.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, he can get those antlers cut out for you, and you can take them around for as long as you want.
Yeah. But yeah, as soon as possible.
Another little quick tidbit, if anybody's listening that's not a taxidermist, if you skin your deer in your driveway, like you're caping your buck out, or even honestly, like in the dirt, like just try to not have the skin come down and like land in your stones or the dirt. Like it just seems like that underside, like the meat and the sinew and stuff, like just suck to anything.
Yeah, because that skin, it's still damp
Yeah.
because surrounding the body, and the body is mostly water and all that. So that skin is damp, and it's like glue. Like, it
Yes.
attaches to gravel, dirt, and all that, and it sticks to it.
Yeah.
And that is like a taxidermist's pet peeve. So
It
if you want
is.
to make good friends with your taxidermist, don't do that.
Yeah, it sucks flushing them with all them rocks and stuff into there. So I am gonna move on to question number 17. This gives me a little bit of anxiety even just to read this from being backlogged myself. Question number 17 is why does it take so long to get my mount back from the taxidermist?
Yes, another common question I get asked on social media and stuff because I do those quick videos. You do them too. That like, oh, you mounted that in an hour. Why does it take so long to get
Yeah.
my mount back from the taxidermist?
Yeah.
And there's so many factors that go into this. Do you want to kind of talk about some?
Well, I know one factor is, of course, there, depending on your taxidermist, there's probably anywhere from 50 to 250 animals that came in before yours came in.
Yeah.
So, they of course have their time before you and got to work through all of those to be fair to get to yours. And if something gets hung up, like, the tannery runs late, they don't have the forms that you want. I know we've waited months for forms. Then that stuff before you gets backed up, and then just is a real domino effect.
Yeah, and like you're saying, domino effect, that's a great way to put it. Taxidermists typically, like we said, are working with hunted animals, and hunting season only lasts for a few months out of the year. So the whole, workload for the whole year comes in just a few months. And so you get multiple animals a day. You can't start on them right away. The process does take a long time. It's not like you can just taxidermy something in a day. There's tanning, like you're saying. And then if
Yep.
you tan yourself, tannery gets clogged up. That could take a while. Some tanneries, their turnaround time is like multiple months. So you got to wait on those. There's so many factors, and it mostly has to do with like you're waiting in line.
Yeah, and then, you always remember that as taxidermists, we work our most of us, like, we work our butts off, but we also have lives too.
Yeah, another good point.
Sometimes, you're working 7 days a week for months and months and months, and you're still behind. You're a human being, like, you deserve to go on a little vacation.
Yeah.
So, we try to make our customers happy, but there's sometimes your mental health needs to kick in too. And so just remember, like, taxidermists are people too.
Yeah, that's that's a great point. Like it's still just a job, Like luckily my customers, they're great. Like I've never had somebody say this to me, but I have seen other people where, they'll post a picture of them and their family, they took a vacation, and somebody will comment, "How can you have time to take a vacation when you should be finishing my mount?" And hey, no.
Yeah, nothing feels worse than that. That just makes you feel like we're already thinking about work on vacation, and then somebody
Mhm.
comments that, and it just takes you down, like, a lot.
Yeah, so there's just so many factors. And then well, another just quick point to that is like when I post these videos or when you post these little quick videos of putting mounts together, there's so much work that goes into that mount before what I typically show and
Yeah.
after. And so there's a lot of work that I just can't possibly show the whole process. I would bore you to death if I had a live feed going on when I mounted this thing. And so, that and then meeting up with customers, taking phone calls, like all that stuff just totally adds up.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. Being, like, a one-person shop, that really does add up, That takes a lot of time out of your day that you don't even really realize, but it does.
Yeah. And then like even this podcast, we're doing this like on our weekends, like
Yep.
on a free time, and like I'm not taking time away from doing mounts to do this. This is my free time.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a Sunday afternoons. This is what we're
Yeah.
doing.
Yeah. So we got lives too. But all right, let's move on to question 18. Is taxidermy toxic slash safe to touch?
Hmm. Well, one, I think there you could almost split this up. I feel like toxic slash safe to touch are kind of two very different things. So I am going to touch on the safe to touch part. Most taxidermy nowadays is yes, safe to touch, but also I say no, it's not safe to touch because you don't want to be touching it all the time. Just because you think of, like, if you look at handrails in public places, people are touching them all the time and they end up getting aged. So
Yeah.
what do you think is happening to your mount every time somebody's touching it, and the oils from your hands are getting in that hair, and it's just gonna age it? Like, it just I so safe to touch. Yes, but also no.
Yes. Yes, but no. So like you're saying, your hands have oils, they have dirt, they have moisture, all that kind of stuff. And people think, they see this beautiful like fox mount or something and they just want to run their hands through it. Well, while you can, you literally can, don't do that.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
let, all your relatives, all your friends touch it. Eventually, it's going to get greasy and stuff and just get kind of dirty. So that's a good point.
So then do you wanna touch on the like, if they're toxic?
Is taxidermy toxic? Not really. Like you touched on, like old mounts, like pre, common methods. Yeah, some of them might be toxic. They used like arsenic to preserve some of these animals back when. So sometimes they might be. So if you have a really old animal, especially us taxidermists, when we're like redoing mounts, sometimes we got to be careful because we don't know what they used to even make the mount in the first place. And,
Yeah.
when you're chopping into the mount, dust is kind of flying into your face. That could be toxic dust. So we kind of have to be careful about stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah, but kinda like you said, not many people are gonna really encounter that. Not a
Yeah.
lot of people have ducks from the 1800s and, like, because I think it was mainly, honestly, back in the 1800s and early 1900s that they did a lot of that arsenic
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
I don't know the cutoff time for arsenic in taxidermy mounts, but that was like the standard way to preserve them was using arsenic. And I
Yeah.
think I could be wrong, but I think a lot of taxidermists got arsenic poisoning from
Oh,
handling
I'm
it too
sure.
much.
I'm sure. I feel like most taxidermists now get stuff from all the other stuff that we're using. I know, just for instance, 2 skull cleaning guys that both got cancer who are like full time, have been cleaning skulls for a long time. And I think it was the same type of cancer too. Now, thankfully, we don't mess with the stuff that they're messing with to whiten all these skulls and to grease them. But
Oh, like all the bleach or not bleach, but
yeah, I think
like
it's like the
peroxide stuff
peroxide, and
and
there's like
really?
some, yeah, it just seems like a really strange coincidence that they both got the same type of cancer and they do the same type of job. So,
Mm. Yeah, I'd be a little suspicious of that as well.
yeah, so I ain't doing that. We will move on. Are you ready to move on to question 19?
Yeah, let's move on
Okay.
to 19.
All right. So, question 19 would be, what can I use to clean my mounts?
What can you use to clean your mounts?
Yes.
So that's a great question. Get this question a lot, so much so that I made a video on this. I know Heather, you made a video on this
Yes.
too.
Yeah. It was older, it was a few years ago, but yeah.
Yeah, so it's a common question and rightfully so because these animals are made of organic material and you got to know how to clean them properly so that they don't fall apart. What I recommend people do, get the dust off your mounts. You can use like a Swiffer and that's pretty good like if you want to do like regular maintenance, like if you're a person who is good about dusting your house, just wipe down the mount real quick and always kind of well, I'm talking about deer, I guess. They're maybe a little different. You can physically wipe down a deer, go with the hair patterns. That's a good way to clean them off.
Yeah. I would say, like, you kind of commented, like, short hair type of stuff. That's fine to kind of like wipe down. I'll touch a little bit on if you have, bears, fox, coyotes, bobcats, things with fur. I always tell people it depends on like your house too. Like, I don't know what everybody has at home. I usually tell people to use their shop vac and like put it on the blow setting and you can blow them off. That's something best to do like regularly so that you don't just end up like you wait a year or 2 and then you blow all this dust all over your house,
Yeah.
off these mounts. But you can kinda, like, every few months or something, just kinda blow them off or, even if all you have is a hair dryer, make sure it doesn't get too hot, blow them off with a hair dryer. If you're able to take them out to your garage with an air compressor and kinda blow the dirt off. And then I always tell people to just get a Q-tip with a little bit of, like, Windex, clean their eyes off, but try to avoid the skin parts because there's paint and you might rub the paint off if you're rubbing that Windex too hard.
Right. So that's you got to just be super gentle with this stuff. Like you're saying, you kind of want to do it regularly. I like canned air.
Oh, yeah,
That's kind of nice.
that's a good thought.
Yeah. Because then it's like, it's not going to work if they're completely dusty, maybe,
Yeah.
but it's nice to just kind of like you blow off around the eyes and around the head and kind of down the back and whatever. That's nice to just basically get the dust off. As far as like wiping down a mount, if you ever kind of want to do that, which maybe if it's a little dirty or whatever, I always recommend don't ever spray the mount itself. Use like a Windex or an all purpose cleaner. I always recommend spraying like a rag or paper towel and then using that on the mount.
Yeah, and avoid oily things
Yeah.
like I know people wipe some down with Pledge. I'll do the antlers with Pledge, but
Yeah.
if it's too much Pledge, it's gonna get in the hair, and it's just then gonna cling to dirt and not be so good.
Yeah, you hear pledge being kind of thrown around a lot for cleaning, and which, yeah, you can kind of use it, but like you, I don't really recommend it unless you're just doing the antlers. And again, spray it on a rag first and then wipe down the antlers.
Yeah. Yep, exactly. The only thing I spray on my mounts is if I have, like, a hair sheen,
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh, Show Sheen or Cowboy Magic or something. I'll
Yeah.
miss that and avoid the face, and then I'll do the face with, like, a damp rag with it, and that gives them a little extra sheen.
Yeah, because the we got so much like, paint and other kind of sensitive areas around the eyes and nose and even like the inner ears. So avoiding that if you can is the way to
Yeah.
go.
Yeah.
But of course, those areas get dirty. So, like you're saying, use a Windex on a Q-tip. Just be super gentle.
Yep, exactly.
Let's move on to question 20. Can I wash my mounts?
So, I'm just gonna say no. So,
Yeah, don't do it.
I made a video a little bit ago about us washing a antelope, and it was just, one of them deals where it was dried for maybe a week or 2, and we didn't have the time to wash it when I mounted it, so we washed it afterwards, and, the amount of people that I had asking, "Oh, can I do that to my stuff? Can I do that to my stuff?" Like, some of them would probably be fine, but I just would not chance it. Because
No.
1, if you had to blow dry it with, like, a hair dryer, like, I just so much could go wrong.
Yeah, like how I just did with that cat. Um, yeah, so I'm with you. My answer to that question is just basically no. We do it as taxidermists due to the process of taxiderming. We're not doing it to clean a dirty mount necessarily, or if we are, we're cleaning a dirty mount and going to redo some of the
We know what to
finished
do
work
if
or
it
whatever.
doesn't go
Yeah,
well.
exactly.
Yeah,
So I always say, nope, leave that to a taxidermist. If your mount is super dirty where you need it cleaned, take it to a taxidermist to get bathed.
yeah,
Because, like you said, I only wash mounts before the finishing process anyway. So I haven't even painted the face. I haven't even epoxied anything. It's always prior to that and after the
mhm.
mounting process. Yeah, we we both post videos of washing animals, and people think, "Oh, I can do that." No, don't.
Yeah, yeah, just that's not gonna go well. Like, I know I saw there was one of this, like, how to restore an old mount on those, like, 5-minute crafts or something,
Oh
and I know I
yeah.
did that reaction video to that, and oh my gosh, they washed it. It was like an old I guess it was a caribou, and they washed it, and then they show it there, like, a little clip of the person blow drying it, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, that would take forever." You'd be blow drying that thing for, like, 3 hours.
Well, I just did that bobcat, and I only have the blow dryer, and I'm, like, in denial, like, "I don't need a pet dryer, I can just do the blow dryer." No, I really need a pet dryer. I need to
Yeah.
stop sleeping on that because it
Yes.
probably took me a couple hours, which was fine. I kind of enjoy that part, but you got so,
Oh,
yeah, when for any taxidermists out there, if you wash your mounts, you gotta make sure they are completely, like, dry, like, that hair is dry. You can't just
yeah.
stop
Yeah.
midway and let it dry on its own. No, it has to be completely dry. So it can be a little bit of a process.
Yeah. Yeah. That it can. That leads us to our last question of the day, and that is question number 21. How long does a taxidermy mount last?
That's a great question. I've been told with these modern methods that we use, a taxidermy mount should last a lifetime. Of course, it matters, how it's taken care of, how it was mounted in the first place. Those are all factors to consider. But, really they should mount or they should last your whole lifetime. You could
Yeah.
pass it on to your kids, pass it on to their kids. Like if it's like we're saying, if it's kind of cleaned up, dusted off frequently, if it's not in the sun, if it's not subject to a bunch of temperature fluctuations.
Yeah, all that can definitely wreak havoc on them. And you do got to remember, like, if you ever see, 15, 20, 30 years down the road, like, they're starting to, like, crack a little bit around, like, maybe the nose or the eyes or even, like, the ears. You just have to remember, like, that is leather. If you have it somewhere that it's really getting super dried out day after day after day or year after year, like, there's a good chance that the skin could possibly crack because it is a hard, dry. hard, dry material that if it gets some moisture and then it gets taken away and moisture and taken away, like, it's a lot of flexing for something to not ever crack.
Yeah, the moisture, humidity, if you're in a humid climate, it might be subject to more humidity fluctuations, temperature fluctuations.
Yeah, like people, you hear about you don't hang your deer mount up over a fireplace or a wood stove. That just ends up, I don't, it just does a lot of bad stuff to them.
Yeah, everyone kind of thinks of it, oh, the deer mount above the fireplace. Can't wait to hang this mount above the fireplace. No, don't do that either, because that could ruin the lifespan of your mount.
Yep. And the sun is bad. So many beautiful elk and mountain lions and deer that have just turned to, horrible white blonde colored.
Or you ever see old mounts that have been like in a bar, when they had
Oh,
smoking? And so
oh,
then you get
yeah.
mounts that they absorb all that smoke, and that super affects the integrity of the mount too.
Yeah. Yeah, the hair almost gets like a impenetrable like tar that you can't
Yeah,
hardly, it turns yellow. Yeah. And then bugs, like we kind of talked about, if they can wreak havoc on stuff. That's probably a good episode for some other time too. Just kind of the bugs to watch out for in your mounts and in your homes.
that would be to touch on that even more. It's hard to say exactly how long these mounts are going to last because I think just in the last like even 30, 40 years, and maybe just a little longer than that, the process of taxidermy has changed quite a bit. The way we preserve the skins and different methods have changed. So it's hard to kind of give an accurate answer because we just don't know yet for these, modern mounts that we're putting together. A lot of older mounts have held up pretty good, like from the 50s and stuff, considerably, but they were using kind of different methods sometimes. So it's hard to accurately say.
Yeah. And actually, if you think about that, it's almost like trucks and cars were made a lot better back then with different
That's a good
materials.
point. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
new materials don't always mean, I hope they mean better.
Better. Yeah.
But I hope it's not like the new cars where they're like, "Yeah, they die after 5 years."
Yeah. So we may not know for
Yeah,
sure until 80 years down the line. Are those mounts still good? Are they still holding up? Do they look exactly the same or have they kind of shifted a little bit? Or we'll see.
yeah,
Should last a
yeah,
lifetime though.
yeah, only time will tell. Well, that about wraps up our episode for today with the 21 frequently asked questions about taxidermy. We would like to thank you for listening to our new podcast, Wildverse. We hope that you enjoyed learning a little bit about the questions we get asked very frequently on our social media platforms. If you would like to follow us on Facebook, you can follow us at Wildverse Taxidermy Podcast or on Instagram at Wildverse Podcast. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Wildverse Podcast, to see when new videos come out if you would like to watch along with us. Or you can leave us some love on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen by leaving us a review.
Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you have a great week.
Bye.